Hello, if there are a couple of you there, we're starting just here a couple minutes early just to wait for a few people to enter the room. You could let us know you're here if you'd like on chat. There's 3 people.
3 people.
Good to have you here.
I'm just going to test out the link really quick.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And just to let you know, I am going to be moderating, and it'll say Ecclesia Arts on the bottom.
Cool. Yeah, we about a minute. People start coming. Hopefully, we'll start with whoever's here. Carla,
hey,
greetings, Carla. Oh wow,
we're
how
so
wonderful!
Happy you are here.
Hello, Buttercup. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Oh, this is exciting. Hey, Philly Jilly. Hey, hi again. Good to have you here. Welcome.
We're going to get started in about 60 seconds.
Well, yeah, but we probably wait maybe just a couple minutes after 8 to sort of have a formal start. But right now we can just do this little bit of informal welcoming. Hey, this guy shops, Chris. Oh, nice to see you. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So happy to have this happen tonight. Hello, Collector at Heart. Good evening. Oh, I saw
Leslie. That's Leslie.
Oh, I was going to say, because I remember seeing that earlier. Sorry, I don't know everybody by name yet. Bonnie knows you all more by name. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Yes. Oh, this is really exciting. Maria, nice to have you back. So good. So nice to be here with you. Perfect.
I see we have 10 people here now.
This is beautiful. 8 o'clock. This is just beautiful. We're just going to, so cool, dude. We're going to just start in just a couple of minutes and just to give people a couple of minutes to be here, and then we'll get started. But it's nice to have an informal moment to say hi to everyone, and say hi to yourselves as well. That's great.
Where is everyone from tonight?
Yeah.
No, we're in Ohio. If anyone hasn't, we're in Ohio right now.
Yes. Hi, Witchy Angel.
Hi, Angel.
Oh, thanks, Buttercup. Appreciate that. Orlando. Whoa, Philly. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, she's in Orlando.
Oh, wow. Hot today? Good for you, Philly. Jilly. Hey, Witchy Angel. Yeah, does anybody else could kind of say just maybe what location you're from, just to get an idea?
Toronto.
Toronto. Wonderful, Buttercup. That's great. How exciting.
That is exciting. Columbus. That's Chris. You're in Columbus.
Yeah, Chris.
That's right.
Okay. Yes. Right now for Okay, good.
I'm excited. This is gonna be a really good group tonight.
I believe so. Thank you. Yeah, we're just gonna wait another moment just to see who might come in the door.
Such a recollection for live theater for me. It's so different.
Yeah. Hey, hi, Rona. Welcome.
So happy
Good
you're
to see
here.
you. Good to see you. Yeah. Perfect. We'll have a little live start.
Okay.
I think we know most of you, but just in case someone's new to us, or you to us, or me to you. Orlando, also Witchy Angel. Wow. Okay. I'm Lenny Pinna.
And I'm Bonnie DeCasey.
And together we are Ecclesia Arts. I want to welcome you to the first live Q&A for the limited TV series In the Name of Jamie Wakefield, which is based on this book, A Face from Uranus, correspondence between Ted Burr and Henry Bellarmine, 1943 to 1945. I have Bonnie, fortunately, here tonight to moderate. So she's going to be able to pay attention to your questions and comments and feed them to me so that I can keep a flowing process with you. I'd like to just maybe talk for just a few minutes on some of the things I'm thinking we may discuss, but then after that, it's going to be open to what your questions and comments are, and I will have a discussion with you. So just to start to say that the letters that I discovered that led to this series were in 2000 during the filming of Letters to Uranus, The Hidden Life of Ted Burr, who was at that age 76. Then for all these years, I held on to the letters and I started developing a film script, and then I developed the limited TV series that we're talking about tonight. I'm really curious about in this discussion is for those who have seen at least episode 1 or episode 2 or episode 3 or any combination or any of the dramatic readings, to just have some understanding of, what we're talking about tonight. I know that there are a couple of areas I'm going to be interested in talking about with you, and that is, the use of the device of Ted and Henry meeting little by little and more throughout the series, because in actuality, they didn't meet in real life, but dramatically they are meeting. Mm-hmm. And something I'd like to tell you is that offhand, almost, I'm going to say about 90, at least 90, maybe even 95% of the dialogue between Henry and Ted, when they are talking to each other, comes directly from the letters. I really, for the most part, are using their words, their voices, but I've sequenced and constructed, but it's their language that I've used. I also want to point out that I did a lot of research on the lives of Henry and Catherine Bellarmine. First of all, I got to know Henry through his words to Ted, but he didn't really talk very much about his personal life. And he only made one reference to Catherine, his wife. I have a wife, and she wrote a book that almost ruined my reputation. That's all he says about her in the letters to Ted. Although when he's ill later on, Catherine does write to Ted. So there was very little known about Catherine. So it's the research I did. And I have to principally thank Professor Harry Bain from South Carolina, who had done his dissertation on the life and works of Henry Bellarmine, who gave me so much information about their lives. And so that's truly what has allowed for this well-rounded, larger scope series where you're getting to know Henry and Catherine. But I have to say, Henry and Catherine's dialogue, for the most part, is definitely made up by me. But what I used Henry's words from the letters to get the tone. Catherine also did write a book, My Husband's Friends, and I got the tone of Catherine from her book. And so I feel like I've really paid homage to these figures and really worked to find all the clues that I included. But now I'm going to open up the discussion here to see what you might want to talk about. Has anything come up that people have put in here?
Not yet. I'm actually going to start a little bit. We currently have 18 people here, which is great. And I actually want to start in October when you actually posted the first episode, which is the pilot episode. So I know a lot of you, I'm just watching everyone's names, of course, and I know many of you have watched the pilot. There might be a few of you who are brand new to Ecclesia Arts. Welcome. You may not have seen the pilot yet. So what Lenny has done is created this TV series on YouTube. And if you haven't yet seen the pilot, I highly recommend starting with that pilot episode after the Q&A sometime when you have some, it's a 90-minute pilot. It's a little bit longer. But I think the first thing that I would actually be interested in to get this started is how you filmed the pilot, because it's actually a very interesting story.
Yes, we did do a Q&A on that.
Yes, we did.
But it's good to blanket that again.
Yes.
In my living room in my childhood home, which is where I'm living at the moment, I created this 90-minute pilot by using everything within my house, within my life, within my creative skills, with the help of an iMac that Bonnie gave me. I shot scene by scene by scene by scene to put that all together. But I would really love to have you ask me questions or tell me comments, anything about that or anything. The character work is amazing. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Anything come up yet?
Not yet. So what's interesting about this entire series, for me especially, is that it is a period piece. So I know a lot of you that have seen this already agree. I could not believe the level of how each character was incredible. Yes, each character. So again, getting back to the series, Lenny plays each character in the series himself. And we had actually talked about different ways of doing this. So this is actually an interesting story that a lot of people might not have heard yet.
Yeah, it was a choice. It was a choice. It was a practical choice, but it was actually more of a theoretical choice and an artistic choice. And that is because, okay, I wrote the script. And if I would have cast actors, I'm already, first of all, finding really good actors, wherever I'm at is not easy. And the other thing is then I would have to impart everything I know to the actors. Also, whoever I cast starts to give an impression. And maybe they weren't the perfect person to be cast because it's maybe the actor I could find to read that part. Well, already I'm starting to give the audience then suggestions, and my main concern is because I would like a producer to someday, or producers to produce the larger series. I did not want to give any suggestions about the actual characters' looks or just anything at all that might start to gear them one way or another. I thought I do what a lot of maybe playwrights did in older years ago. They read the whole play to the cast. And what it is then you're getting the arc of action that I intended in its sort of purest form, the way I think it would go. But what it would really still allow is a producer to look at it and say, he's given us a through line to look at, but he didn't give us all this suggestion to kind of lead us in a direction or not. That's open then for the full production when we do the real casting of who to get for each role. And so I think this was the most effective, practical, but also the most pure way to get the through line of the story out was by me. I am fortunate that I have a background in acting, and so and I have done plays where I played multiple characters. So in a sense, it kind of fit me very rightly to do it this way.
Exactly. We have some questions coming in now. Thank you for the question. So the first question is the letters. Were they original copies, and how did you get the letters?
Yes. Okay. So in the year 2000, I made a film in one evening about the 76-year-old Ted Burr, and it was during that evening of filming that I discovered through our dramatic dialogue that he had written to this famous author, Henry Bellamy. And then little by little, he started telling me more and more about how it was about his gender confusion when he was 19. And he had never told me anything about this before. And I knew him for about 8 years prior to this evening. Well, then I asked him, would you show me the original letters? And he took them out of a trunk in a cardboard box. They had been sitting for 55 years in this box ever since Catherine Bellamy, Henry's wife, in 1945 sent all of Ted's letters that he had written to Henry back to Ted. So from age 21 to age 76, 55 years, Ted was in possession of all of the original correspondence. That's when he showed them to me. Then he transcribed all the letters because Henry's handwriting was very difficult.
Yeah.
And he gave me a binder with all of the transcriptions of the letters so that I could read the letters. And I mean, from the moment I read the very first letter to the end, I was like, there is a dramatic story here to be told. It was the year 2000, and I knew America wasn't ready for the story. And yet I knew there was a story that someday needed to be told, could be told, and there would be a day when it could be heard. And so I believe we're at that time. So I then was bequeathed the letters, the original letters from Ted in the year 2003. He had a health scare, and he knew that I was going to be doing either a film or a TV series. He gave me permission. So he said, before anything happens to those letters, if something happens to me, I'd like to give them to you. And so the next time I returned from California, I went to his home and he handed me 3 big blue envelopes with the years 1943, 1944, and 1945, and all of the original letters were there. I carried those letters with me for 20 years and kept them, tried to always keep them in a safe place in kind of a sterilized one of those, Tupperware boxes, and hardly ever touched them. I wanted to keep them airtight because I knew that they'd be archival quality.
Yes.
And so it was last February, actually. Yeah,
it was actually.
It's actually around this time. It was about a year ago.
I
I went to the University of Mississippi archives. What brought me there a year earlier was that Henry Bellarmine and Catherine Bellarmine's archival papers are at the University of Mississippi, and it happened to be that 3 of Ted's letters didn't make it back to Ted. They were actually in the archives at the University of Mississippi. I did get permission from the archives and I printed them in the book. But I also at that time thought, I think this is where the letters belong, the final resting place of Ted and Henry's letters. They created a separate collection called the Ted Burr and Henry Bellarmine Collection, and it's linked to the Henry and Catherine Bellarmine collection. So now the original letters are housed at the University of Mississippi archives.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So we actually have some more questions coming in. Thank you so much for all the questions. So Chris would like to know how long it took you to get into character and switch characters, because that actually was a bit of a challenge.
Well, let's see. There's two parts to this. Scene to scene to scene, I sort of in improvisationally created each scene, the set, because I was sort of part reading and part acting it out. I had to keep rehearsing. So for every scene that you see in the pilot, some of those scenes I might have shot 30 or 40 times.
Yes.
Some of those scenes maybe I shot 10 times, but on average, probably at least 20 takes of each, because I used each take more to learn the lines, because I was basically learning them in action. I mean, I'd written them, but I had never studied them and to know them by heart. And so it took me that long to do that. But while I was doing that, first of all, I had to watch the angles. I had to keep working for angles. Where am I looking? But the other thing is I kept deepening and deepening where I knew the characters were coming from. Emotionally, I was able to deepen and deepen and deepen throughout each take. Now, the thing that was happening within each scene, many scenes, was one character was talking to another character. So I was playing 2 characters, but only wearing one costume. I want to say that I developed that technique really from being in a show in the year 2000 in New York City. There was a playwright, Chris Howie, had written about her life journey of changing genders from male to female. She had been a 45-year-old male with a wife and a 16-year-old daughter before she transitioned. And she wrote this play that had over 26 characters, male and female, reoccurring, different ages, different genders, different, from baby to old age. And I played that role. And what happened is I had to be dressed as a man in Act 1 and play both male and female characters. And in Act 2, I was completely dressed as a woman, wig, makeup, fully, bodysuit, whole bit, and had to play both male and female characters dressed in that costume. There was an interesting moment toward the end of the play when Rebecca is the name of the character. When Rebecca was almost her full expression of a woman before she had her surgery. She was out, she had to live as a woman before they would allow her have surgery, at least a year. And so she did some dating, and she was dating a man. And in the scene, I had to, as Rebecca, begin to tell, I'm forgetting his name now.
He was a while ago.
I'm forgetting what his name is. But the point is, she had to tell him that she was transsexual. And this was a guy who was like, oh, I'm really glad we're dating. Here, I brought you a rose. It's our third or fourth date. And I'm really in. And she was like, something to tell you. And little by little, she's like, I'm a transsexual. She goes, oh, bisexual? I'm fine with that. She goes, no, Greg. No, no, Greg, transsexual. And he turned immediately into this threatened male. And the next words out of his mouth were, and this is going to be MA, mature audience.
Yeah.
He said, do you have a cock? And from that moment to the end of that scene, his rage got bigger and bigger and bigger until he finally says something like, if I ever see your fucking faggot face, and I'll break your... Well, I'm dressed completely as this woman. And I had to be, and I had been talking as, no, Greg, let me explain. Somehow in rehearsal, one evening, it hit me almost like a rubber band that had stretched so far, but it snapped together in a way. I've understood the two sides of sliding from extremely feminine, extremely sensitive to within a second. This angry, raging. And it was like something happened where all of a sudden my acting from then on allowed me to know that there's this little tiny center place where I can slide very quickly from this to this, which is why in that one scene in the pilot where Ted is giving his resignation, it's like, it's not my fault. And in a split second, the major says, for God's sakes, be a woman, with this intensity.
I remember
that was a technique, really, though, I learned from back in 2000 doing this show in New York.
That's amazing. I love hearing these stories, and I've heard them again before. It's just, I'm always engaged. Actually, we have another question. Are there any more letters, or the possibility of any more letters out there? That's actually an interesting question.
You mean, yes. Well,
with Ted, between Ted and Henry, is that the full amount of? I mean, are there any missing letters?
There are. Oh, okay. Well, Ted transcribed all the letters, and I said he handed me this envelope, and they were all in order. I didn't touch them for years and years and years. When I went to publish the book, I decided that I was going to go to the original letters to make sure, because he had transcribed and typed. I wanted to make sure, and this is what the editor would do, is to go see that, make sure that he put everything that he had said. Did this compare with Henry's? So as I was comparing, after about a year and a half to 2 years, about a year and a half of letters, all of a sudden, Ted's letters were missing. I had the transcriptions, but the actual letters were missing. I'd say a good 20 letters. It's like at a certain point he stopped, and I can tell you, it's in episode 3 he's moving to Cleveland. A lot happens in Cleveland in episode 4 and 5, and in some way, I don't think he wanted people to really, even though he transcribed them for me, I don't know if he really wanted those letters to exist, because I was like, why are all of Henry's letters were there?
Yeah.
And all the transcriptions were there, but why did he withhold those original, say, 20 letters? And I talked to his niece, who said to me about 2 days before he died, and she thought he was in his complete faculties, he said to her, I regret having thrown out those letters.
Oh, okay.
Now, she knew that I had made a film about him 20 years earlier. She thought he threw out all the letters. So she thought all the letters were gone.
Wow.
His family was totally shocked when they found out that I actually had the letters, most of the original letters, because he had bequeathed them to me personally and handed them to me with permission in the year 2003. So they were both shocked and delighted. But when she said to me, her name was Amber, when she said to me his regret, I thought, is it his regret that he held back those 20 original letters from me? That could be. I will say there's other, if you see the film Letters to Raina sometime, he kept on writing to Catherine Bellarmine for 9 years afterward. And so there were letters between Ted and Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually found a couple of Ted's letters among Catherine's papers. They're not in the book because this story is about Ted and Henry. However, he had an ongoing relationship with Henry's wife, Catherine, afterward. He actually went to Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, after she moved from New York back to Mississippi. She invited him down for a week, and he was actually at her salon. She had salons for famous writers, and Eudora Welty was at the salon, and Ted met her. And so those letters are gone. So I don't know if that also what he meant was that he threw out all of Catherine's letters. But the thing is, all of his letters weren't sent back to him from Catherine. I happened to just find 3 letters of his in Catherine's papers at the University of Mississippi archives.
That's amazing. So, I mean, there's so much that goes into this, the history, everything. We actually have some more questions. So there's a couple twofers going on here. So actually, Susan said the timing for this seems perfect for today. Any interest in Hollywood? And it goes along with Chris's question, talking about, was it always your plan to make this into a TV series movie? And I think that they kind of go together, because there's a reason you didn't try and do this years ago.
Absolutely. Okay. So again, I got these letters. I read these letters in the year 2000. Being in the theater, producing plays and knowing films, I was like, no way is America ready for this story. It's ahead of its time. Even though this is 1943, they were talking about things in 1943 to 45 that we're beginning to talk about in the last 5 to 10 years. Exactly. And I'm like, America's not ready. It's going to take a while. And so I knew up to about 2008, 2010, after the films Boys Don't Cry, that starred Hilary Swank playing the transgendered Brandon Tina. And to me, it was Brokeback Mountain. That became the breaking point, I thought, where something has happened in our culture that this film is so well received in mainstream right now. And there's an interesting reason why I think why. Everyone got in touch with these 2 men from their insides, but it was still a little safe because both men ended up with tragic endings. One was killed, and the other one was left really like a shell of himself. So it wasn't like a gay positive ending, but what I think it really was very helpful in our culture, and this is why I think it's important to what I'm doing, it's really helpful it was helpful in our culture that they could see what had happened to these men internally that led to this, that if they had been allowed to love freely, they had been allowed certain things, their endings wouldn't have been tragic. That then says this is a social tragedy. And it's then when people started to realize more and more about what the internal lives of homosexuals were through Brokeback Mountain. So that started to give me hope. And so at one point I thought I was trying to get European producers to look at it, because I thought, you know what, Europe's a little bit ahead. I think my work has a little bit of a European sensibility. And so I thought maybe I should try to get this produced in Europe. The other thing is I was working on it as a film at first. I thought it was going to be a film. But it was like 4 hours long. And I knew it wasn't the right thing until I saw The Crown in the year 2016. When I was watching The Crown and how the structure was working, I thought, this is the best way to tell this story in at least, 6 parts, maybe, where you can have the flashbacks back and forth, where you have some time to tell the story with some more breadth, more richness of detail, more intimacy. and not like every 10 seconds something has to happen that explodes. It was.
I'm going to interrupt
Yeah,
you
please.
Because someone said, I saw your film at the Cleveland International Film Festival. I was also privileged to be present at your discussion afterwards. Your serendipitous discovery of Ted's letters still lives in my mind.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's amazing.
I don't have your name, but it's but of Ohio. That's really beautiful to hear. Thank you so much to say that.
So for people that don't know, this film was Letters to Uranus. This was in the Cleveland International Film Festival.
Well, here, speaking of that, I want to point out that there was a man who stood
the
up.
Other Ted.
Yes. Thank you, Ted.
Hi, Ted.
Yes, Ted. Caress, I think is your last name, is how to say it. There was somebody that stood up at one of the Q&As at the film screening in Cleveland and said, I hope you know what you have here, meaning the film I just created in 2000. You have the prequel or the prelude to the real film, which is about the story that's contained in those letters. And I hadn't even read the letters yet. And when he said that, it was like, whoa. I mean, how does he intuited there was going to be a story. Sure enough, when I read those letters, I'm like, that man was right. There was a story just waiting to be told. And so I'm so grateful that he even said that planted the seed.
That's amazing.
That's what happened, really.
That's amazing. And, like I said, what's so interesting about, this is.
Yes, Ted. Yes. I know. I painted your portrait. Yes. Your inner portrait. Yes.
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
So glad you're here, Ted.
Okay. What was Ted's original plan with the letters? Chris wanted to know. That's a good
question. That's a very good question. Okay. So right before we did the film, Ted had looked at Henry's letters. He actually started to think, I wonder if those letters that have been sitting in a box all these years have any publication merit. And so he started rereading Henry's letters and transcribing them because they were so difficult to read. But he hadn't looked at his letters yet. But he definitely had an idea. After we did the film, Ted then typed all of his letters out and he put them all together. So he gave them to me to read, but he actually sent those out to a couple of publishers to see if they would be interested, and no one bid on those. And so I want to tell you something that's interesting, because it really is part of the story. When he handed me the binder of letters, the title he put on the title page was Killing Uranus. Even though in the film he said that Henry Bellamy saved his life, he also acknowledged that a part of him was killed off in order to save the other part. And that's what happens little by little by little in the series and that's what I think people are starting to detect in episode 3, mm-hmm. How Ted stops wearing makeup, starts cutting his hair, starts listening to Henry's advice to conform. So yes, Ted was able to live more easily in 1940s with Henry's help. And he also lost half of himself. Mm-hmm. And even some of his creative outlets. He kept acting, but he stopped writing, mm-hmm. piano, lots of things he stopped. And I think that was all part of what went with the part of him that was killed off. And I'm bringing this up because this is why I think this story has some relationship to Brokeback Mountain. It's in the fact that I think Ted was more self-realized at the beginning of the series than he is at the end of the series, but he didn't know it because society did not let him see himself as whole and worthy and valuable. Mm-hmm. Even though inside he kept saying, God must have a plan for me. There's a reason I must be like this. But with meeting Henry, he did what a lot of beings do, and that is they start to become conforming to the societal norms.
Exactly.
And so that's the thing I think people are going to start feeling more and more and more like, oh my goodness, while Ted is becoming more able to live, he's also losing a part. And it's in that losing that I think people are going to see a mirror to what we see in society as to why we don't let people be who they are.
Exactly. We actually have a couple of questions. I'm going to go in a little bit of different order because it makes more sense.
Yes.
I may have missed this information, but did Ted go back to his original letters, or did he make copies of them for his own documentation?
The copies of the original letters, no, he never made copies of the original letters. What he did was he transcribed the letters on his word processor, and he made one copy for me.
Got it.
So
that's amazing.
So the original letters, no copies were made. Well, in the book, I have a couple of copies in the book, but there wasn't like a whole set of copies made of the original letters. They all exist just intact at the University of Mississippi archives. What I have is, or what Ted did was, he created a typed version, and then he made me a copy of that typed version.
There's a lot of amazing comments. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Jamie, that was actually something that made me sad. When I read the letters, I felt like Henry was really suppressing Ted, but I guess if it was to protect him today, it would be much different.
Yes. And see, this is why I think it's an effective story to tell now, because, you know, Shakespeare did this all the time. He would tell stories about what was going on in England, but it set it in the past. It's the frame of the past that if you tell the story from that point of view, people can actually see it more clearly from the distance of time. But if you tell it in the present, everybody felt the identification level is too high. Like this, a modern version of this wouldn't work. It's the fact that they were writing letters. Like right now, it wouldn't be the same story. But by looking at it with some distance, we can see ourselves more clearly now. And that's what I think it offers, is by watching how Ted gets stripped of some of himself, I think it actually pulls our hearts to understand what the insides of people who we don't know well or think are different. We find out how much we have in common. We find out how much they're sacrificing or suffering. And it's because this story, I think, will lead people to feel that. That's why I think it's an effective story for now that could only be told now.
I agree. Susan would like to know what's next. What is the plan for the series? What do you hope to accomplish with this?
Honestly, the number one goal is to attract a larger producer who will want to do the fully realized series in a period, 1943 to 1945, with a great cast and a big budget, and really bring the full richness and texture of this story to life. What I only did in the pilot a little bit is start to give you a little bit of the classical music that's part of it and how they play piano. But there are scenes in which they go to the opera and to play. You know, you've seen opulent films where characters are at the opera or play. There's like this whole milieu that can be brought to life of the New York social life and artistic life. And there's also the Cleveland life. And then there's the bucolic life of Bellevue. And it's going to take a big budget, and it's going to take, you know, a big commitment to bring all that world of 1943 to 1945 together. So that's the goal. Now, I don't have a producer in my back pocket. I'm trying to attract. I'm also in the process of, you know, trying to maybe get an agent. So I'm putting out the materials, all the materials we have, the website, the producer's demo reel. The script is available. I had a couple of agents ask to see the script, the pilot. So I'm in that process of now, right where that gap is between, I think, being ready and somebody realizing it's ready. We're right there. So I'm also trusting, by me putting it out to as many people as possible, all of you who you share it with, all of the other people who have seen the pilot. I just think somewhere along the line, someone's going to be connected to someone to say, hey, did you see this? I don't know how it's going to happen, but I just feel the best thing is for me to put out the story now. If I waited, though, just for a producer, none of you would be having this discussion with me right now. So my decision was, I want to tell Ted's story to as many people as I could tell, even though it's not produced at the level I would hope it could be produced, but I at least want people to be in touch with the character. And somehow I just think the energetic positivity of all of you falling in love with Ted, or really liking the story, or really getting engrossed in the drama, I think that all that energy is going further and further and further out, and I think it's going to attract the right people to bring this story to life in a much bigger way. I'm at an interesting point with putting episodes on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to. Is there any questions on this?
Not yet. No.
Okay, good. I'm at an interesting point. You know, I have half the series now that can be heard on YouTube. It's a tricky point with the producers. I don't know about putting it all out there, like the whole series. Yes, I have it copyrighted. Yes, it's time stamped on YouTube. But I also don't know everyone who's going to know it, and I don't know who might borrow something. But also, I don't know if the producers, what they'll think about if I put too much out. So I'm at this point. I'm at a little pivotal point as to knowing how to do this. So I'm looking into a way in which maybe there's a much more select place to show episodes 4, 5, and 6. We'll
just
see.
Looking into some options other than YouTube to, possibly share the content.
Yeah.
The other thing I saw farther up, I think someone had asked, this is actually a true story. Like Ted and Henry are, real people.
Absolutely. No, this is a very true story. So Henry Bellamy was a famous novelist in 1940s. He wrote the novel King's Row, which was turned into a film. Warner Brothers made the film in 1942 called King's Row, and it starred a young Ronald Reagan, and that was the role of Drake McHugh that catapulted Ronald Reagan to fame. And so Henry was very real. Ted was very real. And it's just amazing that a 19-year-old and a 60-year-old, two different worlds, bucolic, small town Bellevue, Ohio, and the upper cultural echelon of New York City meet in writing and in such a deep psychological and artistic enmeshment that they affected each other's lives. I think it's just extraordinary. It's rare. And that's why but it's also I had to tell it in an unconventional structure because they didn't meet. It's not a linear story. There'll be a chronological story, but there's also a contingent story about the things that happened in the past for Henry and Catherine, which involve his very close friend, Albert Berghauser, who was the model for the character Jamie Wakefield. And that's the character that caused Ted Burr to write to Henry Bellamy. So all of those worlds are interrelated through Henry, Ted, Albert, and Jamie. All of those threads are woven together. So it's kind of like a little bit of a kaleidoscopic structure in a way.
And I see a lot of people are typing. This is great. I'm kind of reading through the comments. Everyone's just, commenting on, basically, it would be amazing if it was turned into a TV series. I'm reading for you. Wonderful comments. Does anyone have any last minute questions about the story, Lenny, how he started this? Anything you want to ask? Definitely post below.
And while you're doing that, I do want to talk to you about the main device of Henry and Ted meeting in the series. So in episode 2, I believe, episode 3, apologize. In episode 3, which we just did, they start to meet as apparitions. What happens is they're starting to affect each other's psyche. Ted says and I got the clues from the letters themselves. Ted says something like, it's no wonder I tell you everything all the time. It would feel uncomfortable if I didn't, because you've almost become a silent partner in my life. Later in the letters, he tells Henry, "You're with me at the restaurant. You're with me when I'm at the opera or at the symphony." And I thought, they're living. And Henry said so many things about without even seeing your picture, I know you're a good looking boy. Like he's already imagining. He's like, someday we will go to the art museum together. We'll be this. And I thought, they're already penetrating each other's psyches in a way that they're meeting. And I thought, it might be a little bit funny because you remember the Ghost and Mrs. Muir, for those who are old enough, there used to be the ghost that was sort of like in an apparition, black and white form that only Mrs. Muir could see, but nobody else could see. Well, that's what I'm using. I'm using the fact that they're involved in each other's lives so much that they feel that their presence is in the room with them, talking to them. And their words are playing in each other's heads, and a lot of Henry's words are playing in Ted's head. So I thought it makes perfect sense that I could slowly bring them together through apparition. And then they start to meet in these imaginative places, which I'll equate to if anybody ever saw the film All That Jazz about Bob Fosse's life. And Bob Fosse, in some imaginative realm, kept meeting the angel of death, Jessica Lange. As the angel. And they had these scenes together. And there's something about and the thing is, these two figures, it's about their imaginations that are their main artistic expression. It's about their imagination. So I thought if they meet in imaginative places together, that can further the story. So little by little by little, they meet more and more. And I wanted to feel toward the end that you almost feel like, haven't they been together? Have they not really been together? Because they actually feel like they're in their intimacy, in their writing. They are together.
Actually, Chris has a very good question. So is there a limit to the story? Is there an endless amount of episodes? Or is there like a stopping point to this?
Excellent
question. That's a really good question.
There's a stopping point, and it's a natural one. Henry Bellamy died in June of 1945, 3 weeks after World War II ended. And that was the end of Ted and Henry's relationship, was his death. And so it has its own arc and its ending. So it is a limited TV series. No, there's no extra beyond. It's a story that tells itself in one limited series. Yes.
I have another question. By the way, Nicole just stopped by.
Oh, great, Nicole. I'm glad you popped in. Wonderful.
I have a question. What is your favorite Ted story for the elder Ted? Do you have a favorite story? There's so many of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to say, but I think I have to say that it has to do with our film. Ted had a private life until February of 2000, and it had to do with me. It had to do with me being a close enough friend that when he started saying a couple of things, I asked questions like, "What do you mean what was that about?" And he uncharacteristically opened up to me. I found out that night, and then subsequently, he actually told me more things that no one ever knew. His family didn't know. None of the theater colleagues knew that he had worked with for years. They didn't know anything about his private life or his past life. I became very honored and privileged to be the one that listened, asked questions, and that he opened up. So the point I want to make is then that I told him, you have control over this material. I really feel it has potential, but I want you to have control. So I said, I'm going to take the footage and make a film for it, and you get to see it and you get to choose what you want to do. Keep it just for yourself or share it. And he made the decision that it basically at age 76, it was coming out. And we held a preview before it was in the Cleveland Film Festival, Letters to Uranus, and before it was in the New York Independent Film and Video Festival. We had an invited audience only at the Cedar Lee Theater in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. He invited his family and all of his theater colleagues. We had a guest list of about 150 people that came to see the premiere of Letters to Uranus, The Hidden Life of Ted Burr. I happened to go to his home afterward where he invited his family over. They were saying to me, thank you so much for making this film. you have now introduced us to our uncle that we loved so much, but we did not know. Not just about what his lifestyle or who he loved or what he did, but also the pain and suffering or the deep moments that had happened. They didn't know, and neither did his theater colleagues. So I want to say, to me, that night when Ted saw himself for the first time on the large screen, I think he was very glad that he made the choice to open up, and then for him to give me permission to have the letters and make something of the letters. I know he wants his story told.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Rona actually has a question.
Yes.
Who is your favorite character to portray? And to add to Rona's question, did you connect to all of the characters on a personal level or just certain characters? That's interesting.
That's a great question.
That's a very interesting question.
Okay. I enjoyed so many of the characters as an actor. All of them in some way. They each had a moment for me. However, if I had to pick the three characters outside of Ted and Henry and Catherine, I did enjoy Catherine. The three characters that it's because something happened for me. It was like another place of where I wasn't acting. I felt like I was being a conduit. And that is Ted's mother, Helen.
Mm-hmm.
I could cry right now. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why that she was special in some way, because she actually facilitated his wearing girls' clothes when he was young. I mean, she didn't know what to do, but she did something uncharacteristic for the time, and that was to not make him feel bad, but to actually let him be who he was. So in some level, I think I really deeply connected to her. And I felt her pain then when she didn't know what to do when things weren't going well for him. Mm-hmm. The other character I really enjoyed playing was Sidney French. And that's because Ted wrote a novel, The Surf and Terror Fled, with Sidney French as the main character. Now, that character, as described between him and Henry, was a very extreme character. But what it was at the center of his novel, he put a character that was non-binary in 1943. And that's what affected Henry so much, and why he was upset, was because he put this non-binary character who Henry would say, yeah, if the world had three sexes, Sidney might pass. Ted had the boldness to take a part of himself that was already in that non-binary or double-gendered place almost, but more non-binary, was to put that character and exaggerate him front and center in the novel. So to me, playing that character was playing Ted's real message of he couldn't be who he was, but Sidney French was who he was going to use as the vehicle that he could play as an actor. And the fact that I got to play Sidney French somehow, like I wasn't like, I was like Ted and Sidney and all of that, and I lost myself. And the third is Albert Berghauser. Albert Berghauser is the character that's the most surprising. Is I didn't know he existed at all until I met Professor Henry Bain, when he told me that Henry's childhood friend, Albert Berghauser, was the model for Jamie Wakefield, and at one time was his lover. And so Albert was the enigma, but he was the key to everything. So I want to say probably Albert's soul is more of mine. I wrote Albert's poems in the series. So I enjoyed playing that part of me that was deeply connected to nature and to poetry, and really I felt had a real heart for love. So I have to say, Albert's probably the close. I mean, internally, there's something about Albert that I think I've put part of myself in. So I guess that was that I did something that was kind of vulnerable as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching the clips as they came, because Lenny would send me the clips the next day. And when you sent me the Sidney French in the surf, I was blown away. That was
when I have to tell you, when I saw the playback of Helen, of Sidney French and Albert, I was like, I know I'm being used as the actor in this, but somehow I knew it was like beyond me. Like the scope of this is beyond me. It's bigger than me. Ted and Henry and many, you know, cosmic spirits are like some universal thing is coming through me. And those characters did it for me where I was like, I don't even know how I did it. I looked at it like, that was me.
I know, and there's so many of the other characters, like the baseball player and Gene.
I love playing them. I love playing them for different reasons. I love Gene.
I know.
And I loved all of them. And you know, I mean, I think what an actor does, actor should love every character. I had to find compassion for Henry because when I first read the letters, I thought he was a villain. From a modern perspective, like whoever said, hey, I feel like he's suppressed. I had to really find, though, when I went into his life, how he was also, like everybody, constrained by society to make the choices he did. So I had to find compassion for him. And at some point, I really found my deeper compassion and care about being Henry as well.
I know, and all of the characters, they're just so complex and they're so deep and just meaningful. I mean, this entire story. I mean, I've been here since April working with Lenny on this, and I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, the whole process of doing this as it rolled out has just been an experience that.
And this right now is a momentous evening in that, again, bringing my live experiences of the past to bringing this to YouTube and to feel you as a community, but also to share really truthfully, vulnerably, where I really hope this project's going to go. And you're part of it. Those of you that have commented along the way about things you've detected or observed or felt have confirmed for me as the writer that what's working, what people are feeling. And so you've become part of what I consider the work in progress. And I'm feeling better and better that this story definitely has something to say to where, and I think not everybody, but I think there's a large portion of people ready to hear the story now and be moved by it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many comments. I'm actually glad to hear your thoughts about Henry. It really did clear some things up for me.
Thank you, James. And if you did read, if I'm not mistaken, I think you read the book, the postscript. I tell more of those stories about what I found out about Henry in the postscript to the book.
Yeah, and I mean, myself, even going through the whole process, I mean, I had such a hard time with Henry too. I mean, all of these characters you have to just absorb and
I have to, Catherine. I have to say, dramatically, I let Catherine be a little bit of the heavy-handed, maybe hard-edged character in early, but she has the longest arc of anyone. I think people are going to really find out that I have a true compassion for Catherine. It wasn't easy for Catherine either to be married to a famous author who her life, although she was quite talented, when you're the wife in the 1940s of a famous male, your career is there, but it's always slightly subjugated to the more famous male author. And so I felt for her there. And I also felt for her because she loved Henry. She was committed to Henry. And I think she knew that Henry also had other feelings for Albert, and he had affairs. She wrote the book. If you ever want to read an interesting book, My Husband's Friends, is a really great book. She writes like a modern writer. She writes from a first hand point of view, like she's talking like me directly to the audience throughout the whole book. And she happens to describe a childhood friend of her husband's, famous scientist, who comes to live with them in the first 5 years of their marriage. And everyone in criticisms has said it's the same character as Jamie Wakefield. It's the same character as Elbert Berghauser. She wrote about Elbert in their lives for the first year. And that's actually where I got some of my material for learning about Elbert. So Catherine has actually contributed to me writing their characters through her novel. I got it.
Yes, the people are, I mean, I'm just, thank you so much for all of the comments. Everyone is just rating these amazing, you guys all make me want to cry.
I'm so glad you're liking this live. I'm really loving it too. And yes, I believe this is the way to go, is to have more of these from time to time. Mm-hmm. And I think now that we've done it, we also will learn how to do it where I don't have to be right here, that I can be in Pennsylvania and be secure enough to do it with Bonnie moderating.
Yes, we will be posting the live after you can watch it again.
Yes.
We just learned we could do that, actually. I wasn't even aware, but we can.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think we should end the evening with kind of a lighthearted story. So Lenny filmed this. Lenny filmed this in his childhood home, the TV pilot. And one of the most interesting things for me is
I know where you're going.
When Lenny was filming, he would send me the production, the reels, and I'd watch everything. And there was always something hanging in a specific spot on the wall. And I'd say, Lenny, what is going on with that? Like, what the heck? And he's like, it's the thermostat. You have to tell the story, because when you watch the TV series, you're going to understand. And by the way, someone named Lori is in the audience.
That's my wonderful sister who grew up with me in that childhood home.
I thought you would appreciate the story.
There's this sort of like, I don't know, 60s thermostat on the wall in this home. And it was in this spot that I was going to need over and over. But you know what? There was a director once said to me, said to a class, limitation is the beginning of creativity. And so I had the limitation of this thing on the wall. And I kept thinking, what am I going to do in this scene to cover that up? And all of a sudden I was creating, I don't know, a ceramic thing over it, or it was planter, or it became the post office mailbox. I mean, and I would build things to cover it.
The towel for the YMCA.
The hanging towel.
I think that was the first time I really noticed, because I was like, where did you hang your towel?
On the thermostat.
And why are you at the YMCA in your living room? It was incredible.
Yeah, so that became the really fun thing, was how I was going to disguise but make a part of that scene.
It was always so well integrated.
But Bonnie helped me in the ice cream shop.
Yeah.
She goes, I'm ordering you an ice cream sign. I think that ice cream shop should have an ice cream sign.
Yeah.
And she sure was right.
So there were.
My sister knew.
It's funny because there were so many scenes. That's the other kind of amusing thing. The other scene that I was personally so taken with was when Ted was in the movie theater, and then there was another scene with this man, the staring man, that was poking. His wife was poking him. But anyway, I was so blown away, because Lenny filmed this in a 6x8 area in his living room. I mean, this is not an expansive set. And when he filmed both the Sidney French surf scene and the scenes in the theater, I just went, how did you do that?
And the honest thing is, there was no pre-production notes.
No.
I created each scene as I go, what do I need to do to make this work? And I found the right fabric, and I just kept working with the lighting. till I got and I was shocked when I saw the playback. I went, oh my God, I actually look like I'm in a theater.
I know. I know. It was shocking. It was shocking.
I have to say, this is beyond me. I mean, it makes use of all the skills I do have.
Oh, this is a good question. Ronan just came up with. This is actually good to end with. Was it a challenge to portray the younger Ted? That is actually an interesting question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question.
Because for me, you really became like, I mean, obviously, you know, you're not a 19-year-old.
Right.
And what you were able to bring to younger Ted was actually incredible to me watching.
I don't think the younger Ted was hard to play from the inside, because in some way, because of the creativity, my identification with all of his creative expression and his feelings, and I have a different story, but I have similar feelings, you know, maybe lonely, all different feelings that he had at that time. I just wanted to make sure that I found a physical vocal range for him that was just a little higher, that would help me. And I found gestures, and my sister was there for this. The very first, I actually did a scene live between him and Henry, and I found a gesture. And once I found this one gesture, and sometimes that's what happens, it liberates everything. And it was him walking in the room and talking about him dreaming. And all of a sudden it was like, I'm not playing Ted as a young, I'm playing this as a young 19-year-old, but I have to play a young Ted who inside thinks he's a woman. That was the key. It was, I'm not playing a 19-year-old boy. I'm playing a 19-year-old who has the outside of a boy, but his inside. So actually it was, how do I get in touch with the woman? And what I drew upon, once again, was that play I did in the year 2000, where I played a woman. So I had access to what he felt as the woman, and I let that be the lead in how I portrayed him.
That's incredible,
because that's who he was. I mean,
exactly.
there was a woman inside that was wanting to come out. So I figure I have to play that. I don't play a 19-year-old boy.
Exactly.
I play the woman he thinks he is.
Exactly. And you were really able to embody his pain through that. I mean, that was incredible.
And I felt some of those similarities of trying to get your work out. I mean, there are parallels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you, Rona, for that question. That was a very good. Beautiful. That was a very good question. So thank you so much to everyone who has been with us for, I can't believe we've been talking. Well, Lenny's been talking. I've been moderating. The easy part. Lenny's been talking for over an hour, and
it's been a pleasure, a joy. You know what? This is what I missed in the forum, because when I create art, my whole purpose is not for. I like to be acknowledged. Yes, everyone likes to be acknowledged. I don't do it for the applause. I do it for the communication. I do it for, like, let's talk about the characters. Let's talk about the scene. Let's talk about the drama. This opportunity for me, I live for this. This to me is so vital to me.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. I can't even keep up with the comments. Thank you for sharing your story. Love the movie, and we'll watch the series. Thank you. Love this live. This has been amazing. I'm so happy we did this.
I'm very happy. And I'm very happy, again, that I have Bonnie as the person who lends me her platform and her expertise in getting into this medium, and to be here tonight to help me bring me back out as the live person within this medium. Thank you.
Thank you. It's mutual.
and I really thank all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I really feel that this has been a beautiful night for me. Thank you.
It has. And that was really wonderful. Thanks for the invite. You must do it again. That was from Lori. So yes, we're going to figure out technically how we can, incorporate more lives into the channel. And
I only say to you is, please share what you know of this story, of this process, to others. Like I said, I don't know how, but I just believe through all of this energy going out, it will happen someday, but I don't know exactly how. And I think any one of you could be a part of that chain of events.
Mm-hmm.
Because this whole story has been serendipitous from the beginning, from
Mm-hmm.
the very beginning, from Ted writing to Henry. So I just trust the universe is in charge of orchestrating, but that he'll use anybody, including anybody in this audience, as part of the chain of how it's going to happen. So your investment in just being here tonight is another encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you. Rona, thank you so much for this. I loved everyone's question and hearing more behind the scenes content. Thank you so much. So I think we're gonna
we'll say
end on this.
We're gonna
note.
say goodnight and thank you for those of you who took time out from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
and thank you for those who were glad that you had something else to watch out of the Super Bowl. I'm sure there's a balance of everybody.
And thank you so much for watching our Super Bowl reels.
Yes.
the pregame for the show.
My appreciation and my love to all of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Are we going to